Hello there, and welcome to today's webcast, Budgeting for Impact, Frederick County's Journey to Outcome-Based Budgeting. I'm Barry Condrey, Senior Fellow with the Center for Digital Government, and I'm excited to serve as the host for today's webcast. Thanks for joining us. We're going to have a great session over the next 30 minutes. We have a few housekeeping notes for you on the screen. Also, during today's webcast, you'll be able to connect with your peers via social media. Please use hashtag GovTechLive to share your key takeaways, quotes, and learnings from today's webcast. You can participate in the Q&A with us by submitting your questions using the Q&A box through your interface. Please make sure you have your questions ready for this amazing panel. Send in your questions as they come up throughout the presentation, and we'll address as many of them as possible. Remember, there are no dumb questions, only questions that you don't ask. If you're thinking of a question, someone else is too. Someone has to ask it. If your questions are the most important part of this discussion. If you're experiencing any media player issues or have any other technical problems, please visit our webcast help guide by clicking on the Help on the console. Joining me today to discuss this topic are Tanya Kaufman, Budget Staff Software Integrator with Frederick County, Maryland, and Trevor Lloyd, Senior Account Executive, Euna Solutions. Tanya, can you take a moment and introduce yourself to us with your background?
Sure. I am currently the Budget Staff Software Integrator for Frederick County, Maryland. I've been with the county for about 20 years. I was a budget analyst for the first 15. I became the Staff Software Integrator about 5 years ago as we took on increased software for our budget process, our planning, public outreach, our budget book, and our presentation. So that is my current role. And thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Staff Software Integrator is a great job title. I'm going to have to remember that one. So, Trevor, can you take a moment and introduce yourself for us as well with your background?
Sure, thanks, Barry. My name is Trevor Lloyd. I'm an account executive with Euna Solutions. Tanya being one of our customers, so it's great to see her in this environment. And I've worked in GovTech for about 8 years, software solutions for about 12. Euna Solutions is a newer name. I come from Questica Budget, so that's the budget arm of Euna Solutions. So we've been having a brand for about the last year. My role is the same between the two organizations. I work with customers in the Northeast, help implement budget software, and there's still many budgets being worked on using Excel or other basic tools. So really our goal is to help customers modernize and automate their process. And we've got tools to help with projections, personnel calculations, and sharing their budget externally.
Great, thank you, Trevor. So we've got a lot of experience with our panelists here. I think this is going to be a great presentation. Let's go ahead and get started. Our session today is going to consist of 2 parts. First, we will have individual chats with each of our 2 panelists. Then we'll have a group discussion with them, and we'll address your questions. So budgeting is the lifeblood of public sector organizations. This is where the organization demonstrates its priorities and its strategies to the residents and shows that government is responsive to their needs. Effective budgeting means more than just putting the right dollars in the right financial buckets. It means collaborating, planning, and goal setting to achieve specific outcomes. Now let's go to our panelists and discover how this works. And by the way, remember, audience, be thinking about your questions as we go through this and place them in the Q&A box. Tanya, let's go to you first. Help us understand your budget environment at Frederick County. What were some of the pain points that you've had, and what are you guys doing about them with your budgeting?
So our budget cycle starts in the fall. It runs about September through the end of June. In the fall, we have our divisions request funding. So they do that through Euna Budget. And then around the winter, the county executive reviews all of these requests and meets with the divisions to discuss them. In the spring, the county executive decides which requests to include in the proposed budget. She then presents the proposed budget by April 15th. And then our county council reviews the budget and can make any amendments to that budget. The council must adopt the budget by May 31st. Throughout this process, we're continuously involving our citizens. We have budget town halls, public hearings. We also do surveys. So we are very interested in public outreach and getting our citizens involved. As far as pain points, I think most people can relate to, the tons of Excel spreadsheets. So we're taking steps to get away from that. We have very few spreadsheets now. We use Euna for a lot of our tasks like that. One other thing is, with each new administration, the budget process changes. So, every 4 to 8 years, we're having some changes. So that can be, challenging. With continued revenue, shortfalls and limited revenue growth, we are reevaluating how we do our budget and where to allocate those funds. So we're now looking more at what we want to achieve, moving towards outcome-based budgeting as opposed to starting with last year's budget and going from there. And that's been challenging as well, just getting the divisions to focus more on the future instead of what they're doing now and how we're going to do that in the future. So we're getting them to look more towards the future and what we need to get there. So we're on a journey towards our outcome-based budgeting. So that's been a big challenge and kind of exciting.
Excellent. I love the part about having your divisions and your departments, plan, as opposed to just looking backward to what they did last year. You want them to look forward and budgeting to support that. That's awesome. So also changes with administration. That's that's a fact of life in local government and state government. When new administration comes in, they bring their own methods for budgeting and so forth. Maybe we can touch on that a little bit later. That's great. Thank you, Tonya. That's a great landscape. So Trevor, your first question. Now, in your role, you talk to a lot of different agencies about their budgeting. This is like all day, every day for you, I'm sure. You talk to a lot of organizations about improving their budgeting processes. What are some of the trends that you see in this industry? And, what are your customers asking for?
Yeah, there's a lot of trends. There's also a lot of outliers. Everybody does things differently. So if I had to think of kind of the 3 areas that are being worked on the most, at least as a theme, would be first is decentralizing the budget process. So getting it out of finance hands, enabling the departments to actually control their budgets, writing their own narrative on the goals they're trying to accomplish. But of course, having that done with appropriate controls and security. So you don't want them to have the keys to the kingdom. But really by doing that, it's you also have to have collaboration between those departments as well as finance. So you want to enable notes and alerts that can be as granular and specific as a specific budget line so that you can really zone in on what the focus is between the 2 groups. Second trend, I would say, would be budget books. A lot of time and effort is spent by finance teams today preparing the budget data to be in an externally presentable format, and oftentimes they are not they're not in the publication business, so they're using a mix of MS Word, Excel, and Adobe. GFOA, they've recently allowed for digital only version of a budget book, and those standard tools have a hard time creating a version for that. And the GFOA now also requires ADA accessibility compliance. So, our customers need to balance that with also the status quo of citizens having access to a physical book. And, so what we try to do is help them manage their journey of moving from a physical to a digital book, and providing both in the near term, because those are still quite common. Third trend that we see is a need for up-to-date information quickly and in one place. This can often be done by integrating directly with the customer ERP and HR system. It's important. They want up-to-date reporting at their fingertips. They don't want to go to multiple systems. They want to get it quickly. They want to get it accurately. And I think the goal of a lot of people in finance, they don't want to be in the data gathering business. They want to focus on analyzing that data and making the best decisions.
Right. Excellent. All right. So, the digital only budget book is fascinating to me. You know, the ability to push a button essentially and produce a budget book that the budget books are so time consuming for the budget organization and so visible. So that's fantastic. I would love to see a digital budget book like that. And I love what you said also about the quality, um, the quality of the data and the quantity of the data in one place, so that you can use the data for data-driven decision making, assuming not be in the process of mining the data, but also providing the data. It's awesome. Thank you, Trevor. You know, Tonya, back to you for a moment. We've heard you say you're on a journey to adopt outcome-based budgeting, and you know, I think that term means a lot of things to a lot of different people. But I'd like to zero in a little bit on what it means to you. You know, how does outcome-based budgeting support the county strategic planning processes, and you know, what exactly do you hope to achieve with the move to that?
So we are implementing outcome-based budgeting slowly. It is a journey, as I said before. This is quite a big change for us. We started with having divisions set goals and indicate targets for those goals. That kind of got us on our way. With, as I mentioned, the limited revenue growth, we are having divisions look at their existing programs and how they align with the county strategic goals. So every division has done that. They've categorized their programs into programs that they maybe want to stop or keep, and then they've indicated some new initiatives as well. So we are having them do that. We have chosen a couple of divisions to do a deeper dive into their programs, more focusing on who they serve, how many they serve, what they cost, and how those programs align to the county strategic goals. If it doesn't align to the goals, you know, how can we align it? Or maybe we have to stop that program and use resources in other areas. But that's a more robust form of the stop, keep, start that we've implemented. As far as Trevor mentioned, having kind of decentralizing the budget process and getting your divisions involved, we have done that for quite some time. We use Euna budget to link funding requests to strategic goals. So our divisions enter requests for funding via Euna in a change request, and we have fields there that they must complete, and that links the request to the county executive's overarching strategic goal. They have to indicate the sub-goal that it's linked to. They also, we have a field where they say, they indicate the outcome achieved if it's funded. It used to say, you know, what happens if it's not funded, but now we've moved to outcome achieved, more future looking. We also have them linked to our overarching strategic plan called Livable Frederick. So each of their funding requests has to be linked to one of the strategic goals and sub-goals. And we hope to achieve more efficiency with this, make it more future focused. I think it helps to focus on what matters to constituents as well. So citizens care more about what they're getting for their tax dollars. It's easier for them to see when you can quantify, you know, your budget in fire response time, senior meals delivered, and things like that. So I think it also helps with getting the public involved as well.
Excellent. So, you know, it's always occurred to me that the flow down of strategic goals from the leadership in municipalities, you know, cities, counties, whatever, the flow down to the divisions and then to the departments and the work groups, you know, that is always difficult to implement. But it sounds like, you know, you're using Euna to actually implement that kind of flow down, and the divisions, when they tie all of their funding requests to the strategic goals, it's almost like they have their own strategic plan right there in front of them as a result of that. So that seems like a great way to enforce, you know, at the enterprise level, the strategic goals for the organization. It's awesome. Now, Trevor, you know, she's talking about outcome-based budgeting. She's checking a lot of boxes for state and local government. You know, one of the historic things that people have derided local government for in the budgeting space is you just get what you got last year. You know, maybe with a little bit more, maybe with a little bit less. But she's really describing an environment which is evergreen, Um, and that's one of the things that, local government, progressive local governments always wanted to move to. It's not easy to change these processes, though, if you want to put something like this into place. How did UNA budgeting help organizations move along in their journey as Frederick County has?
There's really two ways to do this. So one is when we're implementing our software, we offer change management services. So most of our customers utilize this because this gives us a chance as we're implementing software to adapt to your processes. And we're going to look at the processes and make suggestions based on our experience with existing customers and what your goals are. Change can be hard. Some people just want to do it the way they've always done it. But when you're implementing new software, it's a good time to introduce process change as well, because you've already sort of started to open up that can of worms. So when we do that, we can introduce outcome-based budgeting easily using our configuration tools. And this can be done when you're initially implementing our software or over time, because you can say, create a form that now requires this specific category for a strategic plan that you didn't have last year. You don't need any custom coding to do that. So we can adapt to the process that customer requires.
Okay, so you can meet the customer, to reword a little bit, you can meet the customer wherever they are with their sophistication for adopting change, right? If they're
yeah, it's not all in or not at all. It's if it want to be small incremental changes each year by simply changing a form and how it looks this year, then we can start there.
Okay, so if they're a very change adept organization, you can support that. If they're less adept at change, perhaps you can also support customers in that model as well. That's great.
We've seen both ends of the spectrum for sure.
Okay, all right. So, well, thank you, Trevor and Tonya, for that great information. I feel like the audience has a good idea of the landscape now and the topic at hand. And audience, remember, put your questions in the question box. I see we have a few questions out there. That's awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to start with some fireside chat questions now for Tonya and Trevor while we go through and we look at some of these audience questions. The first question I would have for you is about citizens, okay? So citizens, residents, economic businesses, the needs and the landscapes have been changing. And, how have those landscapes and those changes influenced the need to rethink the budgeting processes? Why don't you, maybe, Tonya, maybe you can give us a couple of thoughts on this, and then we'll flip it over to Trevor.
Sure. I mean, the ability to adapt has become very important. Inflation is taking its toll. We're getting less bang for the buck. So we need to make sure that we're planning a budget that will accomplish our goals and allocate resources accordingly. If we just carry budgets forward, there's really no understanding of the services that we're providing or the cost or benefit of each program. And that makes it difficult to determine if we're meeting the needs of the citizens. So as constituent needs change, our budget needs to change. So once again, outreach is important here as well. So I think that, we definitely have to be adaptable so that we can continue to meet the needs of the constituents and, have a sustainable budget.
It really is a sign of maturity in an organization when you have the budget department in charge of, out there with the population. So it sounds like that's the approach that you've taken. So kudos to you for that. Trevor, what do you think about how the economic landscapes and citizen needs have influenced the need to rethink these processes?
Well, I would say, citizens in general, and of course, of which I am one, are scrutinizing all levels of government more than before. So it's important to be transparent. It's important to, in both the budgeting process, but also in sharing the overall budget. And I think by doing outcome-based budgeting, it allows average citizens, like me, to understand, okay, what's the priorities, and not only what's the priorities, but how successful are they? How can we track them?
Okay, very good, very good. And I'm gonna go to a audience question now based on what you just said, Trevor, because it ties in really, really nicely with what you just said at the end there. Noah asked the question, outcome-based budgeting is future focused. All budgeting is, looking out future focused. Is there also a step where the county looks back and those predicted outcomes and sees if they were achieved? How do you review that the predicted outcomes are happening? And so that seems like a level of maturity where you're actually looking back, you're building those experiences. Maybe we didn't achieve that outcome, maybe we achieved different outcomes. What are we going to do moving forward? Trevor, you were just saying something about this, right? Evaluating outcomes. Can you say a couple of words to this question?
Sure. I think a lot of times we will see customers tracking certain metrics. So whether it's if it's a safe neighborhood objective, the amount of crime in a neighborhood that you can track from a percentage basis before as well as after you've done that spending in those areas. So we've seen those sorts of look backs. And also from a budgeting perspective, in year, you can actually look at what you've already spent and done and reforecast based on the rest of the year if you've done any sort of major injection at a certain point in the year to make sure you stay on target for those for that spending as well. Very important to make sure that you can do your in-year forecasting also.
Okay, so it's not necessarily just at the end of the year looking back over the year, but it's a continuous process. Is that what I heard you talk about as you go through the budget process?
Yeah, so we can enable the look back mid-year as well, not just at the end of the year. So it's just getting more data is allowing us to move a little bit quicker and look more often than we have in the past.
Do you find customers often using mid-year quarterly approaches to changing their budgets in mid-stride?
I would say yes. We've released functionality more recently to help with those in-year forecasting to make it a little bit stronger and more accurate. So, and that was based directly on customer demand.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So it could be a trend. So demonstration of a trend in the industry. Tanya, what do you do? What are your plans for looking back and determining, whether the outcomes were met and building that into the next budget cycle? Okay, I don't think we're hearing from Tanya right now. Tanya, we'll tell you what, we're going to go back to Trevor, and because we might be having a technical difficulty with you, I'm not certain. So, Trevor, one thing I wanted to talk about, we were talking about residents before, and you mentioned, I think you said something to the effect of budgets have never been more scrutinized by residents, right? Residents and citizens. And so building and maintaining the trust of the residents is important in this political day and age. Give me a couple of words about the collaborative nature of what this can bring to the residents just at a high level.
Well, really, I think it's spending in ways that are going to be meaningful to your residents. So, you have to not just budget according to your priorities. You need to make sure that that information is getting shared in a way that the average citizen can actually digest. And a lot of areas that enable that is a lot of the organizations will have some sort of survey and allow voting based on what they think the top priorities are, based on citizen response. That's actually how they're going to grade them. So we're seeing some more of that interaction, on a yearly basis with citizens and government as well.
Okay, awesome. So, okay, we'll go back to a different question here in the audience Q&A chat, and I think this is a very honest question that we have in the Q&A now. My leadership is really not interested in changing our budgeting processes, but I see a lot of room for improvement. Can you give me some hints about how to sell outcome-based budgeting to the leadership?
Yeah, I was mentioning that before. So the good news about how we approach it is it doesn't need to be an all-in-one or nothing approach. Our software allows you to, let's say, classify line items by strategic priority, even if that data is not currently in your ERP system. So that can be done right within the finance group as their own project. It can be manually assigned, and this can at least help to get a basic understanding of the spending that's associated with, let's say, safer neighborhood priority, for example. So you can do that before you take any action or make any spending decisions as sort of like a baseline indicator. So you can move slowly in that way too.
Okay. All right. Awesome. I think that is important. The graduated approach in many local governments, I think, is something that would resonate more so than like a big bang. Tonya, can you hear us now? Oh, okay. We're going to continue. We're going to continue with Trevor then. So we've talked about the role that past data.
I can hear you now, but my connection is not very good, so I'm trying to dial in.
Oh, okay. All right. Are you gonna you're gonna drop off and dial back in? That's good. Just give me a shout when you're back in. I'm queuing up questions for you. So Trevor, we talked about the role of past data forecasting, scenario planning, and creating a new approach for budgeting in the public sector. We've talked about the use of that. Help us understand a little bit about what you see and how Euna budget can look at previous years, even if maybe they weren't in Euna budget, to facilitate that kind of forecasting.
Sure. So, well, first of all, when we do have an implementation of Euna budget, well, Frederick County obviously has years and years, but we want to pull in past data into the system. So we'll actually load that in because it does help with our analytics. And really what our goal is, make that historical information easy to view. So we want data-driven decisions, and you have to have it, all in one place to do that. And then I was mentioning before, we've got our built-in tools to do in-year projections. So you can look at those close periods, January through March, forecast the remainder of the year based on that. So that really helps to be able to make changes if necessary on the fly as well to how you budgeted.
Okay, all right. So, Tonya, we were talking earlier about looking back. I mean, Noah asked a question about outcome-based budgeting. You've got certain goals you're trying to hit, things that you're trying to support. At what point in Frederick County do you look back at what you've accomplished and see if that aligns to, and how well that aligns to the plans that you'd set a year ago? Help us understand a little bit about what Frederick County does for that.
So we do, as I mentioned, we have our divisions set goals and measures to evaluate whether they've reached those goals. And we have them report probably for 4 years, actually, in our budget book. So they measure against that. We do have this larger strategic plan I mentioned, Livable Frederick. So in the future, we'll be measuring against that. But yeah, we continue to look back just to see if we're meeting those goals. We still continue to use budget versus actuals, of course, to see if we're on track, and we do that quarterly. So I think it's always important to continue to look at, how you're doing with the plan.
Yeah, it would seem like an important step to be able to go back to the leadership and say, our outcome-based budgeting approach yielded, these results, and we can now qualitatively go back, quantitatively go back and say this is what we achieved and this is what we should do for the next year. So, okay, well, I'm going to have to bring this to a close. We have run out of time. I want to thank our panelists, and go ahead and wrap this up. Be respectful of our time commitment. So we'll have to wrap it up here. In closing, I would just like to thank Trevor and Tonya and our audience for sharing their insights on today's webcast. I've learned some things, and I'm sure the audience has as well. I'd also like to thank Euna Solutions for making it possible to have this important webcast discussion today. And of course, the most important participants today were the audience. So we want to thank you for spending your time with us. This webinar will be available online at webinars.govtech.com. And we look forward to seeing you again soon at another government technology event. And we hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you.